You are listening to the 5 Squared Podcast, the podcast where we bring you tips for your business and your life. Our goal is to leave you smarter with ideas, wisdom, tools, and entertained. The 5 Squared Podcast is produced weekly for your enrichment. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter at 5 Squared and Facebook. All the links are in the show notes. Now let's get started with your host, business consultant, executive coach, and founder of 5 Squared, Tim Fives.
Welcome back to the 5 Squared Podcast with your host, Tim Fives. Been a great week so far this week. Great meetings. Met a lot of great people this week. Got some new partnerships that we're excited about to serve our clients better. I think there's some really fantastic things that are brewing, and I'm always excited about that. But one of the things that I was contemplating today was kind of 5 factors that kill your motivation. And when we think about killing motivation, think of it in terms of killing your momentum. And what are those? And the first one, I'm going to read through the 5 and then we'll address them one by one. The first one is procrastination. And then we'll talk about number 2, which is distractions. And then the third one is making a bunch of false assumptions. Then we'll get into number 4, which is negative self-talk. And then the 5th one, which is kind of the big one, we'll probably reserve this for another podcast, maybe the next podcast, is fear itself. Let's take these one at a time. So the first one, procrastination. And this can manifest itself in a variety of different ways. When you think about procrastination, it's really focusing on non-value add activities. So if you're thinking about your business, you're thinking about the things you're doing, and when I coach, especially the business side of the coaching, it's really getting owners and leaders to focus on the things that generate money, right? Cash flow is king. If you don't have cash, it's over. And it's any of those activities that you would rather do that don't drive the dollars. And we all get saddled with that. We all get into well, I'm going to go do this. And we think it's adding value, but really at the end of the day, it's just sapping us and taking us away from those things that are pivotal to running a successful business. And it's generally the things that we find fun, that we enjoy doing. Talking, going out and meeting friends for lunches, and that could be one of them. Or hey, I'm going to work on blog posts, or I'm going to work on podcasts for the sake of the argument. And those activities in themselves are okay, but when they detract us from invoicing and collections and those tasks that are sometimes mundane or less fun to do, it's kind of the secret procrastinator, and that really can hammer a business. And then there's the more obvious things, the Facebooking. I don't know, raise your hand. Be honest with yourself if you waste a little bit of time on Facebook. My hand's in the air. Other things like YouTube and watching movies and just all of those activities that seep into our day that are like, hey, I'm just gonna do this. And then an hour goes by and we're like, well, I did that for an hour. And the negative part of that is that it's become self-defeating. Like, I just wasted time on Facebook. I shouldn't have done that. And we beat ourselves up, and then you get into this cycle, and it really, really crushes the momentum that you had. So one of the things that I do with my clients and that I recommend is, if you would like the spreadsheet, maybe I'll put it in the show notes, is I track my clients' time. I have them go out and I do this. And I do this for a specific reason, because I want them to see where their time is really going. Now, this exercise only works if they're honest. And generally they are, because they're good people. And you really start to see where the time is being spent. And that's the first step. You got to understand where your time is going, and writing it down is a great way to do it. And it shows in your mind like, oh, I do waste a lot of time. So that's kind of the first thing. Where's your time going? Now, most of these activities aren't bad, right? And one of the things that I do is after a successful day, successful meeting, getting a deliverable done, doing whatever, is that I then reward myself uh, with some of these guilty pleasures. And, I'll be honest, one of my guilty pleasures is watching car wrecks on YouTube. I think it's freaking great. The stupid drivers that, see wrecking their 100,000 multi expensive cars. So, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do this. Or I reward myself by taking the kids to the movies on the weekends or doing something like that. And it really helps contain my procrastination activities. Now, if you're somebody that says, well, I never procrastinate, please send me an email. Give me a call, tim@5square.com, or give us a call on the 800 number, 1-855-570-0055, because I want to meet you. And I'd like to interview you for the next podcast on the special person you are that doesn't succumb to procrastination. All right, so number 2 was distractions. And I have a great friend that, these are, it can also be categorized as incidental mayhem. But these are the difference between a distraction and procrastination is that procrastination is 100% self-inflicted. Distractions can come in any form, and for a lot of us, it's email, right? So we get that critical email, and it's got to be answered right away, and so we drop everything and get it done. It could be the person coming to the door of your office and just jabbering away. It could be your boss. It could be a lot of things, but the distractions are a huge factor for killing your momentum and motivation. So one of the things that I like to do, especially if I'm working on something that's super focused, I'm working on a deliverable or a speech I got to give or something of that nature, then I block the time off my calendar. And there's a rule that I think we can all subscribe to, is that the most precious commodity we all have is our time. And these distractions tend to drive us into a what's the word I'm looking for? It drives us into a victim mentality. Well, I would have gotten it done, but I was distracted, and because we're not owning our time. So block your time, make it yours. Take control back of that, and especially where people are booking time on your calendars and managing that for you, block it off so they can't interrupt you. The next one is, so those are kind of pretty tangible things, right? The third thing is when we make assumptions. And this bleeds into negative self-talk a lot, but a lot of times, and I see this in a lot of clients, is that they start making assumptions. Well, they're not going to want that. They're not going to want this. They don't want me to do that. And they talk themselves out of doing the work. They talk themselves out of those things. And it's a really dangerous thing, because when you make assumptions, what we're doing is we're thinking for the other person. And I don't know about you guys and girls that are listening to today, but I wonder if it annoys you as much as it does me when somebody makes an assumption about my time, or makes an assumption that, I didn't ask you, Tim, because you're too busy, or I took it upon myself to do this because I knew you couldn't get to it. I'm pretty capable of telling people what I can and can't do, and it drives me insane. So, those are the types of things that you need to be very clear and focused on the task at hand, and focused on making sure that if you are making these assumptions, that they're valid. Now, in project work and things, you can make assumptions about dependencies and those. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the mind playing the trick on you of making the assumption of the other person and what they're thinking. Now, four is just an absolute killer across the board, and it's this is pretty severe, and it's really the negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I feel fat today. Whatever that negative self-talk is, and it doesn't necessarily have to relate to the tasks at hand, but it's any negative self-talk, because what it does is that it derails your thinking. And it's the number one motivation killer, because if you don't feel good about yourself, then you've lost all the momentum. And we all fall into that at times. Oh, this isn't going to work. Why do I even bother? Why do I even get up and come to work? I'm no good at this. I hate my life, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys can fill in the blanks on all the negative self-talk. Now, a lot of people I know don't have that. But, of course, then those people are pretty motivated and they got a lot of momentum behind them. So really be cognizant of the self-talk. What do you tell yourself when you're alone with yourself? So what do I do with that? Well, one of the things that I find works, and it works for me, and I only really have people do activities and things that I know work for myself. And if you find yourself with a lot of negative self-talk, the first thing that I tell everybody to do is go look in the mirror for 3, 5, 10 minutes in the morning and tell yourself, you love you. I love you. Because it does an odd thing, and we don't do this to ourselves and enough. And when we're devalued and we have the negative self-talk, it really can be corrected by that one simple activity. Now, to sustain that, that's kind of part one, going to do that. I have my clients keep a journal of all their negative self-talk. And without question, and the durations vary. Sometimes it's a couple days, a week, a month. People that do that and keep the journal of the self-talk and the things and the feelings, and this pissed me off and that made me mad and I'm this and I'm that, really start to turn around. And over time, at some point, the journal will go from all the negative self-talk to affirming talk. And the trick in that is to start each journal entry with things that you're grateful for. So things, like your family, the fact that it's a beautiful day outside, the fact that you smelled the rain, whatever that you're grateful for. Because again, what we're doing is we're changing the thought habits and the patterns in your head. And when we do that, everything comes from the way we think and the language we use. And then you start to change your behavior, or maybe you're in a little better mood. Maybe you're just a little bit happier. And then your activities from that start to change as well. And what we're doing is we're rewiring the brain with these activities to be focused on gratitude, to focus on love, and thus your behaviors and your habits change. And anybody that's really successful has a routine like that. So they keep the negativity out of their heads. And the final thing, and I'll go into this a little bit now, we're going to do another podcast on fear, because fear is at the root of all of these things. And it is the number one thing that kills motivation, kills your momentum, is fear. Fear to do something new, fear to take on a new project, fear that you're not good enough. And fear is the most insidious thing in our society. And it's one of the reasons why I don't really listen to the news anymore, because it's all packed with fear. So you have to identify the things that you're doing that amp up your fear. But fear manifests itself in many ways. There's things like stress and anxiety and depression and all of those things. And I'm not diminishing depression by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am saying is that when we start to retrain our brain through positive self-talk and live in a world of gratitude, it robs fear of its power. And those that are successful don't live in fear. They live in abundance. They live in gratitude. They realize that there's many, many people out there that need their services, and they're going to go find them. And it changes versus oh my God, I'm not going to make payroll this week. It's a fundamental shift in the way we see the world. And I'm going to stop there for today because I can go down a rat hole. Well, actually, one more thing. Do that. One of the interesting things that I observed this week, I had the opportunity and the privilege to help with a youth group activity at our church. was called Fan the Fire. There was a bunch of teenagers there that came in, and these teenagers, by and large, wanted to be there, and they had a phenomenal speaker, and I'll have to find out his name so I don't mispronounce it. But what was intriguing to me as I was sitting there listening to it is that it was the same message, right? And it's really one of, in any religion, you're living out of abundance or you're being controlled by fear. And the point of this gentleman's talk was fear is the devil's weapon, right? Because that really dials down our ability to be at our very best. And what was more interesting than the religious aspect of that to me was the fact that these kids got it, right? And he really talked to them about their fears and about the things that are holding them back even at a young age. And we think about where we are in our lives and the things that hold us back and all of our baggage, but we start piling that baggage on at a very young age. And it's really, to me, it was a tragedy that that these kids were so responsive to that their lives, even at that young age, were so hard. And I mean, I know it's exacerbated by social media and being plugged in 24/7 and family structures, and there's a variety of things, and that's not the point of today's talk. But if you take one thing away, be very careful how you treat and talk to kids, because they're building and filling up their suitcases and baggage right now. They don't do it as adults. So I think getting these habits to the children out there today to really look at abundance and really look at opportunity helps offset that. And one other thing that we did last week, I think we talked about the fact that we gave the Susquehanna Score chapter talked to a class, cosmetology class at the York Technical School. And what was interesting there as well is just the kids' reactions when you ask them about business in general and would they want to go into business. And everybody to the letter, it was all about their fears. What if I don't have enough money? What if I don't get enough clients? What if this? What if that? What am I going to do? There's so much competition. And it was, they're good questions, but they were all coming from a point of fear and not from the point of abundance. Like, well, how do I plan for success? Well, how do I make my salon the very best so that I can cater to my customers that are coming in? What would there was no positive bent on, well, I've been thinking about this and, what do I do? How do I hire people? Because I'm going to have so much business. Like, there was none of those types of questions. And it was a stark dichotomy as I've been observing this. And, I think that's one of the things that our society programs into kids is fear. Fear of failure. Fear, well, you're not going to work out. You're going to have to work really hard to be successful. And they don't really look at what success truly means. It's only measured in dollars and cents. So we're going to talk about fear in the next podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today, this little tidbit. On Friday, I'm really excited because we're going to have my good friend Ryan McShane come in, and we're going to be producing a series of podcasts with him. So we'll be intermixing that. I'm really looking forward to having Ryan come in and share his thoughts on HR and on leadership and things. And I think that's going to be a great discussion because we're well suited, both of us, to have a fantastic conversation and exchange some ideas. So I hope you tune in for that as well. I'll be coming on Friday with Ryan McShane with the HR Evolution. And I just want to thank you for listening and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much for listening to the show with your host, Tim Fives. We hope you will pass along our web address, fivesquared.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at 5squared or follow us on Facebook. This has been a 5 Squared production. Join us next time for another edition of the 5 Squared Podcast.